Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. The ministry that I do is very unique to the diocese. It has to do with deliverance in all forms. I suppose there's a number of ways that I can do this, but I'm looking at the time and want to bring this down. One of the things we do at Mary's House of Prayer, this is where the center is. This is where we do exorcisms, this is where we do healings, this is where we do deliverances, psychological as well. This is also where we're doing spiritual direction, we're doing healing masses, we're performing or beginning to work on weekend retreats. So this is where we're going, it's becoming the center of spiritual for the diocese. It started originally, and this is going to sound a little bit funny, but that's where it started. Bishop McDonald at the time, I've been retired for 20 years, or almost 20 years, and Bishop McDonald called one day, and I ended up with 9 jobs. And this one he calls and says, this is kind of the conversation. How you doing, Don? Oh, I'm doing okay, Bishop. How about yourself? Are you busy? Well, relatively so. I got another job for you. What is that, Bishop? Exorcist. And he caught me so much by surprise and caught the fear factor, which is one of the things that I want to mention. And my immediate answer, without even thinking, I said, "You gotta be kidding me." And then I realized I'm talking to the bishop. You don't talk to the bishop that way. He said, "I can see from your reaction that there's a slight hesitation in your voice. Maybe you should come over and we'll talk." In the back of my mind, I'm saying, "You're darn right we're going to talk, because this is not exactly what I had in plan." Which brings me to the whole point of this. This is a very difficult subject to speak on because it involves a lot of emotionals and it also involves a lot of people's fears. It is interesting, if you look it out, people are afraid of demons. But on the other hand, what do you hear people talk about? The paranormal, all kinds of other activities. They talk about ghosts, etc., but when it comes to this issue, fear. So I can say that with understanding. That was where I was. Luckily, the bishop said to me, because I was going to say, "I will not do this," and I felt I had the grounds to disobey, which would have been the first time in my ordination life, because he has no right to put my soul in jeopardy. And I felt that he might be. So I was prepared to say to him, "I will not do this." But he was wise and said, "Take some time to think about this." So I said, "Bishop, I'm going to Kenya, and I'll be back in a month. I'll have an answer for you then." So I went to Kenya, and that's where everything changed. I can go through the whole process of that, but that's irrelevant right now. That's a whole other story. The point that I came to is, "Okay, Bishop, I'll do it." So I said, "Who do I talk to?" He said, "I don't know." I said, "Where am I going to go?" He said, "I don't know." So I said, "Well, what am I going to do?" He said, "Figure it out." That's where we started. The rest is guidance from God, and it's all it is, pure and simple. The process of being able to accept, the process of faith, the whole process of finding what was going on, the fact that devil school, this is what I call it, devil school. It's where we go to study about the devil, so it makes it devil school. And, all of a sudden it was starting. I was part of the first graduating class from that school. There's a whole history that goes behind this But basically, it has to do with dealing with people's fears. And that's where you meet the devil. He's a perfect liar. He's a perfect instigator of fear. He's a perfect manipulator. Does all the things that needs to be done so that people will not face or deal with the issue. So when we started, people said to me, well, how many cases you figure you get? Maybe 1 or 2? I do 5 a week. And there are 2 other priests now that are starting to come on board and will be expanding. As they get trained and as they get perfected, we'll be able to work with them and have them work on their own sets of people. We have a team of about 21 lay people. The demand for these people is this. In order for you to walk into that chapel with me, with a possessed individual, I demand confession before you walk in, Mass daily if possible, Rosary every day. If you don't do that, don't go in that room. Because if you do, I'm going to end up working on you. So consequently, and I told him, I'm not going to police this thing. I'm going to put you on your honor. And we've never had this kind of a problem. I say this not to instill fear. Fear is the tool of the devil. I'm done with that. The fact is, though, that even though you don't have fear, you must know your enemy. And your enemy is brutal. He's lived longer than you have. He knows more than you do. And he never sleeps. So consequently, yeah, you have to know your enemy. You don't have to fear him. You know why? Because we have God. And that's the bottom line. In the world right now, there's, people will say things like, there's no such thing as the devil, there's no such thing as evil. Look around you. How many kids are getting shot in schools? How many rapes? How many whatevers? You know the listings that I know. If there's no evil in the world, then what is all this? If you look in the scriptures, it is full of the battle between Jesus and the devil. Just on a lark one day, I started looking at the Gospel of St. Mark. Do you know that every chapter in the Gospel of St. Mark speaks of the battle between Jesus and the devil? There is at least 1, 2, or 3 passages per chapter. That's only Mark. You still got Luke, John, Matthew, and all the rest. Now I pose this question. If there is no evil, why would Jesus and all the apostles spend so much time dealing with this that doesn't exist? Consequently, we know it does. If we look at the history of exorcism, it goes back to pre-Sumerian days. Even before Israel was ever formed, there were such things as rituals for exorcism in other religions, etc., etc., etc. This is not new. After Jesus died, there was a whole order that was called exorcists. It was a minor order, and people who were trained and ready could perform exorcism. Well, there got to be some abuses, and so that's why things got refined and things were pulled back. because some lay people were making this for a living. So he said, you're possessed. I'm going to work on you. It'll be $5 please. So there was abuses. So finally the church said, nobody goes unless we authorize it. The only reason I do what I do is because my mandate comes from the bishop. If you look through history, and in recent history particularly, Pope John Paul started by saying or asking that every diocese in the world should have an exorcist. Cardinal Ratzinger at the time revised the ritual for exorcisms. It didn't work. They canned it. We went back to the old exorcism of 1637. That's the one we use. We use it in Latin. After Benedict Ratzinger became Pope, as Benedict, he reiterated the same appeal that every diocese should have an exorcist. After him, Pope Francis speaks of exorcism. First of all, he had one when he was young Pope, just getting there. And the second thing is that he speaks about it as spiritual warfare. We're engaged in war. If you look at the city of Rome, just the city of Rome, not Italy, just Rome, there are 300 exorcists in Rome. In the country of Italy, there are 500,000 possessed people. And they got 300 priests. In the United States, currently with the classes that have graduated, I'm going to say, I'm not sure now if it's 200 or 250, but we are about 250 exorcists in the country. There are 292 dioceses, so we don't have one per diocese even yet. And the thing about that is we're dealing with a population of what? 300 million? Something like that? 350 million. So we're 250 guys dealing with 300 million people. And you know, we're going to win. We're going to win. Why? Because of the power of God. So that's basically, I can go through a lot of other stuff, but I want to allow some time for questions and answers, because that's really where you get to understand more of it. I could talk about this all day and not cover the same ground twice. The thing that I just wanted to do is break down a little bit. I could go through the whole history of it. I don't want to do that. But we could go through, just to give you some idea as to how you identify. What are the signs of demonic possession? There are 4. The first one is physical strength. The person has a strength that goes beyond their normal being. Example, when I say I have a case, this means that I've worked with a case. It does not mean it was in this diocese. It can be elsewhere. Basically, I'm the exorcist in this diocese and my jurisdiction is here. But when another bishop asks for jurisdiction and it's given by my bishop, then I may go with his permission. This is all on obedience, because the devil is perfectly legal. You don't have the right, and they've had situations where they say that. Oh, you going to exercise? Oh yeah, there, have yourself a ball. Are you done? Now it's my turn. There is no legal precedent. It has to follow the legal obedience from Christ all the way down. Okay, so I was trying to say about strength. This particular woman She was cursed in the womb of her mother. She's 73 years old. Well, now she's 74. She, if you think about it, has never known a day in her life where she was not oppressed. She has, she's 73 years old. She has arthritis. She has some amputations on her legs and her feet. She's on dialysis 3 days a week. And when we worked on her, it took 8 people to hold her down. That's unusual strength for a person that size. That's not unusual. I had one not long ago, and the guy was like twice my size, young age, about 40, in his prime, could take me out in 10 minutes. And all I did was walk up to him, made a cross on his forehead with oil, and I said, in the name of Jesus Christ, you will remain in that seat, and you will not speak unless I ask you. Just like that. He went down. So, we have the control. What most people think is that the devil does. No, we have control because we have the power of God. Okay. So the first thing is physical strength. The second one is the ability to tell things that people would not know. Some people confuse that and they say the devil can foretell the future. No. Not true. No angel, nobody can tell the future except God and a messenger if God predicts it. For example, the angel Gabriel went to Mary and said, you will become the mother of Jesus. That's obviously foretelling the future. However, it is prophetic. It was sent by a message from God. Otherwise than that, no one can tell the future. But you're going to have a whole bunch of fortune tellers that are going to tell you the future. And there are ways where demons work that out. If I had the time, I could explain the whole thing, but it takes too long. But they will, however, deal with other things, like, so the steak you had the other night, why didn't you like it? Now, who knows she had a steak the other night? The devil knows because that's something that happened in the past. And he can use that. And people say, oh, they tell you all this stuff. Like, yeah, of course they do. That's called deceit and manipulation. The other one is to do with languages. They will speak in languages that no one knows, or languages that have been far extinct for years. Example. One of the priests was working on an exorcism with another one. And the person started battling, or what we thought was battling. He was actually speaking in a language. You can usually tell if the person's battling or if they're speaking in a language. So the priest asked the other one, he says, what language do you think that is? He said, it sounds like maybe Persian or Mesopotamian. And the devil says, it's Neo-Phoenician, you damn fool. That's their way of putting you down. So they can speak languages that you do not understand. This is one of the reasons why, even though we have the right to use the English language for the exorcism rite, I don't. I use the Latin. Why? Because most people have no idea what I'm saying. So if I hit a nerve in that person, it's because the demon responded to the words in Latin. He knows the Latin, but they don't. And there are many times when I start that and I start manifesting. That's because I have hit something that resonates within the demon. Okay? And for some reason, I can't see my other notes here. There's a fourth one. It's not as crucial, it doesn't come by as often as the other. When I get to it or when I find it, my notes are pretty complete, but for some reason I don't see it here. Rather than waste the time on it. We'll go into the kinds of entities that we deal with. The first one is ghosts. Most people are afraid of ghosts. Ghosts are actually fun. They're a lot of good time. They're fun, yeah. I'll tell you why, because you see, contrary to popular opinion, contrary to popular knowledge, ghosts will never hurt you. They cannot hurt you. So what happens is this. I go into the whole theology of it. It's kind of a purgatory. The ghost is a remnant of a person who once walked this earth, who usually has unfinished business. And that ghost walks this earth looking for help. But they can't communicate by saying, "Hey, Joe." They make noises, they do weird little things, like, spoons flying through the air and that kind of stuff. None of that stuff's going to hurt you. It's their way of getting your attention. The trouble is, most people say, "Oh my God, it's a ghost, run!" So the poor ghost never gets a chance to ask for the help they need. Actually, when you used to have these things on TV, ghost hunters and ghost, all that stuff, the thing I used to hold against them is, they take advantage and make money off of suffering people, ghosts. They walk in and say, "There's a ghost here, okay, we're gone." And I say, "If there's a ghost there, what are you doing to help it?" I'll give you an example. This is a true story. It didn't happen to me, but a true story. Priest died. And after he died, funeral was done. In the rectory, all kinds of noises were happening, weird things were happening, to the point where the secretary didn't want to go in anymore. The sexton used to send word into the rectory because he didn't want to show up, and all the rest of that stuff. You get the picture. So they called the exorcist. And so the exorcist set up a form of communication with the ghost. Well, the long story was, at the front door of the rectory, as you came in the door on the right, there's a kind of a table with a little mirror, and there's these little hooks for hats, sort of old antique thing, and that little drawer. So you open the drawer, and all mass stipends that had never been said. The money was there, the stipends were there, but they were never said. So they distributed the intentions of the masses to all the priests in the diocese. No more problem. Hold on. So they're looking for help. There's another case of a seminarian that committed suicide, and they did the masses for 30 days in the dorm where the person committed it. And at the end of 30 days, this seminarian was delivered. And I wouldn't go into all the story. The point that I'm trying to make here is ghosts are looking for help. They're fun. They can't hurt you. if, they have energy. So they could pop that light bulb, and the light bulb could fall, and if you're under it, you're gonna get maybe hurt, but that's not an intentional type of thing. If you get hurt, it's by a demon. You get stuff like scratches on your back or on anywhere, that kind of thing. But the difference is that one is the remnants of an individual that once walked this earth. A demon never walked this earth. The only way he can walk this earth is if he possesses someone. Okay? Now, there are various types of after you get past the ghost, there are various types of affliction. One is called obsession, that follows pretty much the psychological term. Obsession means that this person is always obsessed with something. I had one, and all we can talk about is, am I possessed? Surprise. Or you get other types of thinking and behavior. It is a persistent and recurring fantasy, thought, or judgment, even when not desired, that cannot be controlled or altered by reason or will. Sometimes I wonder if scrupulosity doesn't fit in there. The next one is oppression. That's where the demons oppress the person. And, when we were kids, probably the best way to explain that, when we were kids, the nuns used to talk to us about the good angel on your right shoulder and the bad angel on your left shoulder, and they would try to talk you. That's oppression. He tries to talk you into doing things. You should jump in front of that car. You should commit suicide. Have another drug. Oh, and by the way, you should know, drugs and a lot of pharmaceuticals, particularly coming from China, are cursed. They're cursed. They have shamans who curse it. So you should know that. But anyway, the oppression, though, is not a possession, because he's on your shoulder trying to get in, but he's not in. So you deal with that a different way than you would with possession case. The next one is an infestation, where, and that's usually the case, when you have one person that's possessed by a demon, it's never by one demon, it's by hundreds of demons, sometimes thousands of demons. You have the scripture who speaks about that, okay? Infested. The other one is a deliberate, how the devil gets in is through a deliberate pact. The person actually writes a pact with the devil. I have one. I actually have had two. This one here in particular was in his living room, and knelt down and wrote an entire pact with the devil, then stabbed himself on the side to draw blood, and then signed it with his name. And then he comes to me and says, am I possessed? No. What do you think? No. So that's by pact. Others is by a curse. So most people don't believe in curses. They don't believe they exist. Voodoo and all of that stuff, they don't believe they exist. Well, I'll give you an example of a situation. I'm with one of my 9 jobs was with the propagation of the faith. We were at a national meeting, and after supper, we were sitting down in the lounge and having a wine or something. And there was a whole bunch of people, and I don't know how I got on there, but started talking about curses. So this other priest from Milwaukee says, curses, that's all in your head. I said, if it's in your head, how come somebody from miles and miles away can influence a curse on you? And you don't even know what's happening, but you're finding the result of it. I said, that's just baloney. I said, all right, let me ask you a different question. Do you pray? And he said, well, of course I pray. I said, do you pray for people? Yeah, every time they ask me. What are you doing? Well, I'm praying for them. So what is prayer? The prayer is your sending, for lack of a better expression, good vibes toward that person with the intention of their healing and their getting better. So if you can pray for the good of a person, why is it you believe that, but you won't believe that you can pray for the curse of a person? And as a matter of fact, a lot of the shamans do that, Person comes to them and say, I want you to curse that individual. And so what they do is they curse that individual. Then that individual gets cursed, and back the shaman says, I want you to lift the curse. He gets paid both ways. Yeah. There's a lot of money and stuff. The greatest case of voodoo, etc., was Marie Laveau in New Orleans. Some of you may have heard of her. She was a voodoo queen, and her and her daughter made it look like for 150 years she lived. It was really her and her daughter. But curses are, therefore, spells that are put on people by other people. Now, some people say, a curse. Okay, what is a curse? I said, some of you do that on a regular basis. You curse people, not necessarily you, but people curse people. Here's an example. I've been sick for, 2 years. My back, I can't work. And somebody else says, you're just faking. You're just looking for Social Security. You're looking for compensation. And the person says back, I hope you get what I get, so you'll know what it feels like. You just cursed them. You have just sent what? Negative vibes to that individual and hope they will be hurt and hope that they will suffer so that you will feel vindicated. All right? So you're talking about curses are real. Around this area, the predominant ones are Santeria, Voodoo, Sainte Muerte, and there's another one, Macumba. Those are some of the local curses. There are others, but those are the ones we seem to come across most of the time. And finally, of course, Freemasonry. Freemasonry carries its own curse. It'll take me a while to explain it, but basically what you're doing is you are willing upon yourself death by either cutting your heart out, your intestines out, or your throat. May I lose this if I divulge the secrets of Freemasonry. You're bringing on your own curse. And that curse lasts for 4 generations. And we've had situations of that where it was a seminarian. He wanted to go to seminary. And of course he went in the seminary and developed stomach problems you couldn't believe, terrible stuff, until finally he had to go home. As soon as he went home, he felt great. So after feeling great for a couple of months, he went the next semester, went back in the seminary, same thing. But finally, one of the exorcists caught on, it's Freemasonry. So we did the ritual on him, he did it, and he's an ordained priest today, has been for 10 years, doing a great job. The characters. So, and what you should know, by the way, this is not in defense of priesthood or any of the things the priests may have done in the past that you all have heard about. I'm not trying to defend that. I am trying to say, however, there is a movement out there, sponsored mostly through Freemasonry, where it's called mind manipulation. It goes back to the Second World War, when they try to manipulate minds and mind control. And what you do is you take a kid and you train them, and then you put a trigger on them. So they get through, they get ordained, and then you pull the trigger. And everybody says, see what that priest did? There's getting to be more and more of that. That is not to excuse what's going on. It's only simply to explain the kinds of things that are going on out there that most people have absolutely no idea about. But that this is the kind of work that I'm asked to do through my bishop. There are a couple more things I could present to you, but I'm looking at the time, it's 11 o'clock, and I'm told I have to be done by 11:30.
No.
Huh?
I don't think we ever said that.
Oh, I thought that was the time you gave me. Yeah? All right, well, anyway, the rest of it I can explain as we go along. You know, there's a whole thing, how did angels become demons? There's a whole theological aspect that I didn't cover. There's a lot of history I didn't cover. I guess I'm being very aware of the time factors. So what I'd rather do is try to respond to whatever questions or observations that you have and see if we can clarify through that.
I'd like to just stop. I was sitting in my office one day, and
Microphone.
All right, sorry. I was sitting in my office one day.
We have remedial training for you.
The green light's on.
Red light's on, it's
I was sitting in my office one day, and Father said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "I need you." And he said, I said, "What do you mean you need me?" He said, "Somebody's coming in, they want to talk to me, and I don't meet with anyone without a man and a woman in presence." So I said, "Oh, okay." So I go into his office, his secretary's in there, and he says, "I have this lady coming up, she wants to meet with me. I want you to both go into the room, don't smile, don't say anything, don't have a reaction, whatever she says, just look blank, don't say a word." I said, "Oh, okay." She starts going into the room, so I assumed we're going to follow in the room. So I said, his father said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, we're going to meet with the lady." He said, "Close the door." So takes out his little book, and he starts blessing Sandy and me. And he's throwing holy water on us, and it's scaring the bejesus out of me. And he says this, "Please bless this couple, and please keep those demons or whatever 100 yards away from them." So we got out through blessing. I said, "Why did you say 100 yards? Why didn't you say 100 miles?" And that was my first experience, and then I went out and helped them do a couple of situations. So it's you got to be really into this to get involved, I guess.
Which also reminds me, that's a rule that I always had also. Before we go into the room with the person, we always do a series of protection prayers so that all the people that are walking in are protected. We don't start anything outside of it. And he is right, I always have at least one man and one woman. and sometimes I'll have 4 or 5 witnesses. They're really not witnesses. Well, legally, they serve as witnesses. In fact, they're prayer warriors.
Father, question for you, just a practical question. 3-4 weeks ago, I was in my Bible study class teaching, and there was a passage in the gospel regarding the devil. And one of the individuals, very devout, as a matter of fact, said, I don't believe the devil exists. And I said, to your point, I said, look around. Look at what's happening in our world. The devil is real, he's present, and he's laughing with delight at the chaos that he is reaping. And so when someone says that, what would be a good way to answer that question?
Well,
Or that comment?
there are a number of things. Usually, if I'm giving a talk, that's where this kind of stuff happens. And I just say, look, if you want to debate ontological with me, fine. But I'm not interested in worrying about this and that and the other thing. We can have discussions, does the epidemic standard, and I say, I don't want to get involved with that. I got too much stuff.
Right.
All I can tell you is this. Why would you call Jesus a liar? And, well, he's not a liar. Well, he's the one that told us about the devil. He's the one that tells us to fight the devil. He's the one that, if you can't go by his word, whose word can you go by? So I start with that. And then it isn't only him. It turns out to be the apostles. I got, quotations from the Acts of the Apostles, St. Paul, etc., etc. All of these are fighting what? Air?
Thank
So when they say that, I just say, and then on top of that, I also say, you can't come into the chapel with me. But were you to come into the chapel with me, you have no more worries as about they exist or they don't. That's personal experience.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Hang on, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Back when you got started, you said that one of the reasons why they stopped using exorcisms were abuses.
Yes.
Can you just elaborate? I know you spoke about money was an issue. Money is always...
Well, yeah. Well, see, it isn't only money. Let me try to explain this in a way that I like to cut down on all theology, just get down to the words. It has to do with pride.
The original sin.
Yeah. Here's a nice little exorcist who's looking for some work. And he walks out and says, hey, I'm an exorcist. I can, you look like you have a problem here. But I'm really talking about my pride. I have something you don't have. That doesn't only exist there, but that's the kind of things that's pride. If I bring it home, this is personal confession almost. When I was first ordained, the charismatic movement was working very strongly at the time. And I remember I was standing in one of these halls. This woman is talking to another woman, and she says, do you have the gift of tongues? And the other one said, no, I don't. She said, oh, that's all right. You'll get it. Like, I got something you don't have. I am proud of that. Turned me right off. Because that's a matter of pride. And that just simply sets you up for a default, for a fall. One of the things that I remember when I went to devil school, we used to do before we even started, we do a 2.5 day retreat. And in silence and, all the rest of the stuff. And I remember one day, it was my first beginning of the devil school. I was in a chapel and I'm looking, and we were 50 guys. And I remember thinking, I am among perhaps some of the holiest men in the United States. Not the holiest men, but some of the most holiest men in the United States. And then there's me. And I felt awed by them, but I felt humbled by them. And I remember thinking, how am I ever going to be able to do this kind of ministry? I'm just not worthy. Which is still true, I'm not. But the point is this. I'm trying to illustrate the difference between pride and humility. One was trying to boast, the other is trying to serve. Knowing full well that anybody else could be in the same boat as me. But I'm the one that was asked. And I don't know why, even to this day, because I don't feel like I'm worthy. But I was asked to do it. So I'm going to do it. The idea again is the pride, the looking for business, the stature and community that they had in those days. All of those things were factors. And the devil uses that. He uses you against you. Best example I have of that is Jesus. Pretty good example. Jesus, when he was born in Bethlehem, Magi come to see him. They go to Herod. Where's Jesus? I don't know. Now you got to think about this. Bethlehem in those days was a small village. Maybe 3,000 people tops. And they can't find somebody that was just born? Now the devil could. So why didn't they find Jesus? The Magi did, but Herod never did. Why didn't they find Jesus? Because it was veiled from the demons. They couldn't find him. Secondly, proof of that is they were looking to kill all children under the age of 2. John the Baptist was only 6 months older than him. Why didn't he get killed too? So the people that should have been put to death were not. Why? Because it was hidden. Then Jesus comes into the Jordan to start his public life, comes in for baptism. John the Baptist baptizes him, and the scripture says, there was a voice that came from the clouds and said, this is my Son, in whom I am well pleased. This is my Son. Now the devil knows who he is. And the scripture says, and the Spirit led him into the desert, where he was to be tempted by the devil, and we know the rest of that story. The interesting thing about that is, once the devil knew him, the first thing he did is probe. Find his weak spots. You're hungry? Eat. You know, what the heck? Who can it hurt? There's nobody around. They're just going to eat you now. And he answered. And the next thing was, jump from the temple. And then the next thing was, if you adore me, I'll give you. And Jesus simply answered him. Simple. He didn't say these words, but he basically said, you can't give me the world. It ain't yours to give. So consequently, again, what you're seeing is a situation where the devil will always probe you. That was my point. So if he can find your weak spot, then he's going to go for it. And so once he finds that weak spot, he's going to use it against you. And everything else that he can against you. So when I'm in the chapel, I had one happen like that. Somebody coughed, simple cough. Oh, are you okay, dear? That's the devil talking. I said, never mind, she's fine. Coming back here. Because this is where they want to disperse my attention. And consequently, me being always on the radar, I'm watching all of this. He knows when he uses it against me.
I just have- You all know Monsignor Gonzalez, and probably said, what kind of sense of humor does he have? And he probably said he doesn't. But when Father graduated from dental school, we had a little coffee hour for him. And we gave him a gift. Monsignor gave him a gift. He opens the gift up, it was a devil's pitchfork. So that he could get the devil away from everybody. So that, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, every now and then something
Now,
crazy.
if
But
someone
it's
here-
good, because you gotta have sense of humor about
Yeah.
that stuff.
If someone here is interested in getting more information about helping you, assisting you, how are they?
Well, you just call me, and basically what happens then is when I get 2 or 3 people, I'll set up a meeting. And then we'll start talking about what's going on, this kind of stuff. We get, much more personal than you can in a group. And the reason for the personal is not because I want to know your whole life history, that's not. The thing is, I need to find out what are your weaknesses are going to be, and how am I going to be able to protect you from those weaknesses when you come back.
That would scare me right there.
Actually, the thing about it is, one of the things, and as I said earlier, I was terrified. I wasn't scared, I was terrified. So when it came to that, and I remember when we were at devil school, one of the exorcists said, it's not that you should be afraid of the devil. He should be afraid of you. Why? Because you got the power. He's nothing. And I make sure I remind him of that when he's in the office and says certain things, I just slap him down because they hate insults. Their pride is too high. It was pride that brought him down. So what am I going to use? Pride. The thing is, I'm going to go after them. Yeah, I'm going to go after them. And I'll use whatever methods I can that are God permitted, of course. And I usually use the inspiration that comes to me from the Holy Spirit, which we got from the prayers before we get in. And I definitely ask them to sit just on my head and give me the stuff that I need to know. I've had situations where I've said to we call them energumens. An energumen is a person who's possessed by a devil or highly oppressed by a devil. I've seen situations when I've said to the energumen, I want you to say, repeat after me. Jesus, I love you. What do you think a demon's going to say to that? And then when I finally get him to do it, because you have the power. God has the power. I always remember when I say you have, it's not me. And then I said, after they finally said, Jesus, I love you, I said that. Then they said, now I can leave. I said, no, you can sit there, because I got another one for you. And they said, what is that? And I said, now you're going to say, Jesus, I adore you. All hell broke loose. Literally. She finally did.
Any other questions?
Other questions?
We want to thank you, Father, for coming down. It was a very interesting conversation, talk. And if anybody wants to contact him, just call the main office and they'll direct you to his phone call.
I just want to end with one thing. The whole point of my doing this was to let you know there is a ministry out there, number one. But number two, to let you know, you should not let yourself be run by fear. Thank you.